After e4, d6, d4, knight f6, knight c3, g6. So we're playing against the Pirc. White goes on with bishop g5, bishop g7, and now queen d2. In this video, the novelty will be the early h6. Obviously, the idea is to get rid of this bishop here. We have to move the bishop again. How to react to this? The bishop goes back to h4, inducing g5, which will be good because we know that the opponent is going to castle this side. Although obviously that doesn't have to happen. So let's see if black just castles now. Okay, long castle. And now go on with the usual Pirc moves. Knight d7 is met with e5 immediately. Recognize the pattern. The thing is that black couldn't really play e5 already, because you can take this for free. The pawn can't take back since you already have two attackers over d8, so you're going to win a lot of material, so that's not possible. So knight d7 with the idea of pushing e5, it's too late because you play e5 already. Now we're going to look at this move. So we're going to go through knight h7. Knight to g4 is not good. Let's explore, for example. Okay, knight e5 gets taken, knight e4 gets taken. Knight e8, we've seen a pattern like this before in one of the previous videos, when you go like knight d5 and you got a lot of pressure over e7. It's not exactly the same, but you can refer to that to know how to play. Knight h5, g4 traps it. You can argue now that our opponent can play g5, but look, position is evaluated +4. g5 is the only way to save the knight and like come with a counterattack on this bishop. You can't really move the bishop back because the knight will swap, and it's still okay, but better is to take the knight. Takes back, and then now knight f3. You're going to play rook g1, the queen is going here, and there's literally nothing stopping you from doing that except our opponent having to give up a lot of material. So let's go from the start and familiarize with this. So e4, d6, d4, knight, g6, bishop g5, bishop g7, queen d2, and the early h6. Okay, bishop h4, castle, castle, and now development of the knight, e5. Knight to g4, in reality, if you think about it, h3 kind of traps it, but the most accurate move to continue is f4. To support this put a little bit further because there's too many attackers and we don't want to... I mean, we'll still be winning, but the advantage wouldn't be that great. This is the best move. And now h3 is a real threat of trapping the knight. And black can't just play h5 in order to give the knight the opportunity to go to h6 and save itself. Because you will play h3, the knight has to go to h6, and now g4. And it doesn't matter that we're giving the pawn because we're opening the files. Pawn takes, otherwise we will take. Pawn takes, knight takes the pawn, knight f3. This pawn cannot move, the queen cannot move anywhere that makes sense. Queen e8 is always going to be met with moves like knight d5 here, attacking here, and attacking here. It's completely game over, there's no coming back. Queen e8 literally loses the queen, because you're also going to have a threat of moving, and then when you play knight e7 check, the rook will be attacking this file. So I mean, you can have fun. Position evaluated as if white was up a piece. And in this position, after knight to g4, we said we play f4. What happens after g5? Counter-attacking. Attacking our bishop. Well, okay, just take the pawn. Pawn takes back, and now queen takes. That's it. The knight is still trapped. Although you might argue knight h6. Okay, well, look at this. It's such a bad position. Knight f3. And now everything in our opponent's territory is pinned. We also have enough attacker over this square e5. We don't have to worry about anything. Let's see the counterattack. f6, queen to g6. Queen to e8. Fine, let's just swap. Rook takes back. Knight to d5. Attacking here. And that's it. We're completely winning. So in this position, we went through knight g4, we went through, a little bit of everything. Let's see knight h7, the most popular move in this position. Okay, f4. Give enough control over e5. Okay, well, take. Completely winning. g5 can never happen, because we will just swap everything. And the problem with this variation of the Pirc defense is that by playing the early g6 move, our opponent has exaggerated, especially knight to d7, has exaggerated in not giving any freedom to his pieces. So black can't really defend. Look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces that are completely doing nothing. And these two, well, the bishop will be the only piece that is supposed to be decent, but yeah, it's actually not good because f4 nullifies, at least for the moment in the opening, the power of this bishop in g7. This knight here is confined to a role of defense and it can't really escape anywhere. So that's a terrible position. And there's no way for black to get out of this. How can black even develop? Okay, let's try maybe... Can't move the knight because it's pinned. Can't move this pawn because it's pinned. Can't move the knight anywhere. Can't move this bishop anywhere. Let's try the fianchetto on the light square bishop. b6. It's too late now because we play bishop to b5. And now we have 3 attackers over the knight. We are winning a piece. The bishop can't move without losing material. The knight can't move because it's pinned. We have 2 attackers over the queen. And that's going to be it. Okay, so let's try instead of b6, what happens after c6? Maybe the idea of playing queen c7, rook to d8 maybe. Well, queen to c7 cannot happen now because the bishop can take the pawn in e7 for free and then go to d6. And that is a fantastic position. So let's try, first of all, now white plays knight f3 and now b6. The idea is to play the bishop in fianchetto and later play c5 whenever it's possible. Not now. But it looks like maybe now this can be achieved. Okay, too late. White plays e6. The knight is pinned, can't move, so black is forced to play the only move, which is to take this pawn here. But now bishop to c4. Trying to go to e6 and then being the third attacker to the knight in d7. That's going to be game over. And it's now also unstoppable. Unless our opponent gives us the exchange. So for example, rook to f6 to defend this more. And then if we take the rook, our opponent can take back with the knight to develop, but still you're going to play bishop e6. The idea, okay, bishop takes, there's nothing. Because the idea might be to play knight f8 to defend this further, but it's just too late to do anything. So let's take it from the start and let's look at this move now. Knight f6, knight c3, g6, bishop g5, bishop g7, queen d2, h6, bishop h4, and now g5. Get rid of this very strong bishop. Okay, bishop g3, and now knight h5. Winning our bishop pair. Well, we don't care. It's all good because we've induced enough weakness on the king side. So after the knight takes us, but like before we go through that, still either the knight takes us when we have a knight in e2 or not. Still, we always going to take with the h pawn. So knight c6 now, putting more attack here. How is it met? It's met with knight e2. Knight g3, you take with the pawn to open the rook. And now looks like e5 can happen. Okay, d5. And we don't have to worry about the knight wherever the knight wants to go because it's not going to matter. Knight d4 is not good. Because after you take back, a knight to e2 is going to be loads of attack over that square and you're going to recapture, you're going to win material actually. So let's say now, 2 ideas. Let's say knight to a5, knight to b5. The idea is to put pressure over c7 with the queen as well. Well, also now that there's a discovered attack on the knight. So let's say, for example, knight c4 attacking the queen, queen c3 attacking the knight. The knight has to move. And then you can play knight c7, winning the game. So make an example. Knight moves, knight c7, right? If instead our opponent attacks the knight, then we take this one. Black takes ours. Queen b5 check. You can't block this with the bishop because queen takes here. It's a free pawn, it's not poisoned. Rook to b8 is simply met with queen a6. Rook to a8, skewering this, you play queen c4 and everything holds together. So in this position, after the check, what if king moves? Well, okay, knight to c3. Carry on with the game, you're protecting this square. Let's make an example. King to g8 and then king to h7 to get the rook out. Queen to b4. King to h7. Look, our opponent has the bishop pair, so it doesn't really look any bad. However, bishop to b5 position is like, evaluated almost +3. But still, let's say rook f8, can't go to e8 obviously, and there's enough attack over c6, so can't push the pawn. Rook to f8 with the idea of pushing f5, opening the game because then the bishop pair will be stronger. you just play f3 and you gotta keep the pawn chain like this. So for example, f5. Okay, now surprisingly you take the pawn. Bishop takes. Looks like we're just helping this bishop pair to become stronger, but you just play bishop to d3 and you are removing the bishop pair from your opponent, so you're gonna calm down the game and you got better position evaluated +3, and you're also up a pawn. There's no counterplay. The black king is not even that safe. So let's do from the start now so we can look at the other line. So knight f6, knight c3, g6, bishop, then queen, and the early h6. Bishop h4, g5, bishop g3. Okay, they attack the knight. Castle, knight c6, knight g2 to defend the pawn. Knight takes the bishop pair. Okay, fine. Take back, e5, d5. So what if black plays this move, knight e7? This is there to support the square c6 more, so c6 potentially might come later, or even f5. Okay, king b1 is the best move. Castle. f3 comes now, this familiar pawn chain. And again, let's make an example. If f5, take this. It's fine. It looks like we're helping our opponent develop and we're even dismantling our own pawn chain, but in reality, this pawn can never push without being taken. Besides, now it's our move, so we're going to play g4. The bishop has to go back. So, you know, yes, it looked like we gave some development, but after g4, this bishop now just doesn't have anywhere to go to anymore. So what if the bishop actually goes to h7, staying on this diagonal, which looks better? Okay, knight to g3, we got potential infiltration here. So now I start to understand why that happened. Okay, knight to g6, bishop to d3, knight to f4, sitting in a very good square apparently, but still, you take this, remove the bishop from your opponent, important. Knight c2, e4 comes now. So, black move, no much to do, there's basically nothing that can be done. Can't push this pawn because we are attacking it multiple times. Can't push c6 because then we're going to have double attack over d6 and we're going to win a pawn. So after a5 and the only moves now that are possible, a5, b5 and so on. Knight to f5. So that's a good square for us as well. We're also putting a lot of pressure over h6. b5. g3. Kicks the knight away. The knight was attacking nothing from there. Knight to g6. And now we take here. And we're completely winning in this position. And the king moves, we're also going to have double attack over h6. So now we're going to look at something completely different. e4, d6, d4, and now the very early knight to d7. The idea here is to play e5 straight away, so our opponent is stopping us from playing e5 first, right from the start. And this is now a completely different setup than all the other variations we've seen before, so we gotta look at it. Knight to f3, and now e5. But before we look at e5, let's go through what happens if black plays, let's say, g6, right? Now here, we play a4. We're gonna wait a bit and see what our opponent does before we move on. Bishop to g7, knight to c3. Knight g to f6, look like a completely normal transposition. Okay, but now we just play e5, right? And now same problem. The knight will have to go back unless the knight goes to g4. Now there's a lot of attack here. There's 4 black opponents attacking e5. Okay, no, because you play h3. The knight has to go. Knight to h6 and now g4. Castle, bishop to e3. So in this position, what can black do? Let's say it looks like black can take the pawn because he's got enough attackers, but still you take. And this doesn't work because we've got pressure on h6, so that's not possible. This pawn now here is very strong. Cannot be taken because you will just take back, you know. Bishop can't take here. You've won a pawn basically. You're attacking this knight here. Okay, so after bishop e3, what if f5? This is a terrible move. You will just play g5. The knight moves, only square, and then e6. So that's just an example of how ugly the position of the black pieces is and how you can exploit that in your favor. There's a million ways to do that. So in this position, after e5, we went through knight g4. What if the black pawn takes immediately? Okay, we take back, and now the knight has to go once again. Okay, in this case, we play e6. The pawn is forced to take, unless black wants to move the knight. The problem is that after capturing the pawn here with check and then knight g5, the queen takes this queen, and then the knight can go to f7 and take the rook. So it's a very obvious tactic. So after pawn takes in e6, h3 attacking the knight. So knight to e5, knight to g5. This would have happened no matter what. We're attacking this square, and if we go there, the queen is trapped. So after knight to b8, because what else? A knight to c5 maybe? But then again, queen to d8 will come, king takes. And now bishop to e3, attacking the knight. If the knight goes to d7, then you're infiltrating. If the knight goes back to a6, which makes sense, the idea of potentially going to b4 and saving itself from the attack of the bishop, you play f4, misplacing the knight. When this knight moves, you can go to f7 and win material. So obviously the only move here seems to be h6. But now castle. Bishop cannot block because then e6 becomes possible to take. So king to e8. Okay, now we take the knight. Our opponent has to take a piece back, but look at these two islands of isolated double pawns. Bishop d3 should close the game here. Our piece is just so much better. We're going to take that pawn. We also can take this pawn. King f7 is not possible. You can attack it again with the rook, so it doesn't make sense. So in this position, when we went to knight g5 to attack e6, what happens after knight b8? How do we deal with this? Same stuff. Okay, take the queen, king takes. And now f4, removing the knight from there so we can go to f7. The same thing, h6, take, and now take this. Bishop takes us, but now castle along with check. Bishop blocks and develops h4. c6 to give an opportunity for the king to move that way and artificially castle. Okay, knight to e4. King c7. Bishop takes this pawn. This is all best moves for our opponent, but we're still completely winning. We have a majority here. We're already starting pushing, and we should be winning this endgame. So the last variation before we close this video and this saga, knight to d7 early on is met with knight to f3, and now the early e5. Okay. White goes on with c4, a move we haven't really seen happening that much whilst dealing with the Pirc, but this is the best move now because we're preparing d5, and you want to be able to support the d5 pawn with the c pawn. Okay, knight f6, knight to c3. Now there's two ways to develop the bishop. One of them is bishop e7 or g6. If bishop to e7, white goes on with h3, already reducing the capacity of this knight to move, and we're preparing g4, g5. Castle, bishop e3, we're going to carry on with development. Also, it's also important, h3 is also important to stop knight g4, so we can keep the bishop in e3. c6, d5. Take. And now we're already in such a better position. Black can't really, I don't know, play knight to c5 here because this is just a stupid move. You will take, and now you win this pawn. There's no compensation. You got this passed pawn already. a6, you play g3. Let's make an example of how to go on here. Rook e8, bishop to g2. You're developing the bishop from fianchetto. Queen to c7, attacking the knight. Knight to c4. b5, attacking our knights. It looked like, there could be some compensation, but now d6. If bishop takes, you take with the queen. It comes with an attack on the queen, so that can't be ignored. You're up a piece. If rook goes here to pin us, you just take the queen. You're up material. Rook takes, then you will take the rook. So you're going to go up a rook. If queen goes to b8, you take the bishop. Opponent takes your knight. Queen to c2 comes now. And after bishop developing in b7 and castle, our king is safe. Rook recaptures this pawn, but now we play knight to d5. This knight is a monster in there, so that has to be taken. So bishop takes, pawn takes, and now queen to d6, putting double attack on this pawn. You just take here. Rook to d8, attacking it more. Rook a to c1, attacking this pawn. Rook to c7. This is black playing only computer moves all the way here, resisting in a faulty variation. But like position evaluated +2, so you're winning the endgame. b3 comes now. After h6, we're just playing these silly little moves. Rook f to d1, just to keep the advantage of the passed pawn. And you're going to have to deal with this pawn from now on. The thing is you need to remember is that this queen can never be removed from there. There's literally no way to attack it. And our opponent can never really take this pawn because it's going to be defended forever. So in this position we went through why knight c5 is just a bad move. It creates a very dynamic game, but you know, it's just wrong. a6 now by black, best move. Okay, a4, stopping b5 from happening. b6, b4, bishop to b7. It's a close game, so you're going to see a lot of side pawn moves. Those are the best moves. Bishop b7, rook to c1. h6 now. Bishop to e2. Then a5. Surprisingly, you take, and then the rook takes back. So you know the rook is developing on the open fight, but it doesn't matter because castle. And now knight c5 seems possible because after taking, this can be taken in multiple ways. However, position is compromised. There's double attack on e4. This is a typical move that they play. This early knight d7 in the Pirc with the knight in f6. The idea is to go to c5 to put more attack here on e4. So you play knight d2 defending there, queen to d7 developing. Bishop to b5 attacking the queen. Queen moves. Now we take this knight, surprisingly. This cannot be taken in any way. If you take with the queen, knight b3 wins the exchange. If you take with the d pawn, knight to c4 attacks the rook, rook moves, and now d6 wins a piece. That's a fork. And if you take with the b pawn, knight to c4 attacks the rook, rook moves, and now rook to b1. And the idea here is to play f4, e5, d6 and exploit the open files. So it's position evaluated +2. I think it's enough to close the line because we've gone very far, and obviously the chances of the endgame looking exactly like this are decreasing. But as mentioned already, you know what the plans are, you know how to deal with the Pirc. You go on with f4 now. So let's see now, for example, bishop a6, trying to swap with our bishop so to get more activity. Doesn't matter, you take, and pawn takes, and then you got this move. And in this position, if instead of bishop a6, and let's say black takes our pawn, as mentioned, the plan e5. We're threatening to take here, we're also threatening the knight, as the knight moves. Well, it doesn't really have anywhere to go that makes sense. So after pawn takes, we just gave 2 pawns away, and it looks like at this point even just winning the piece doesn't help that much. But the endgame is winning for white, position evaluated +3 after this move. The black pawns c5, e5 are not particularly strong. f4 is going to fall after f5, e5. So we're going to close the line here. And yeah, this was the end of the Pirc saga, how to beat the Pirc saga. It's been a pleasure to do this for myself and for you if you've been watching. Make sure you like the videos and spread them around with your friends to help support the channel. I'm sure now you're much better than before at dealing against the Pirc, and I'll see you in the next videos.